So as I said to you, from the HUCMI, just to give you an introduction of HUCMI. Sorry, let me get rid of these floating controls. Here we go. So just to introduce HUCMI to you a little bit more, we have been around for a couple of years. We operate from 27 different locations across the globe. We've got 27 training centers, and that's what I mean by locations. We operate as a family. You know, whenever we carry out our training, we share some lessons learned. We come up with key learnings in terms of you know, what we provide and after the training that we carry out, and you know, the certification programs that we do carry out. We've also got amazing trainers that have been and still are change management consultants. So these are people who understand, you know, the trenches, what goes on projects to some detail. So when you come through for our training and certification programs, we give you some information which is relevant, and we interact in terms of how we have also experienced some of the project dynamics, you know, that you are going through, and that helps to consolidate our teaching to you as well. We are also PMI accredited. You know, if you take up our training courses, you will receive some professional development units, you know, with regards to PMBOK. And we are also, you know, we keep on learning from you. So as much as we have a knowledge base that is as follows. We have our first edition, you know, from 2012. And as we learn, you know, we keep on improving. We create more editions, as you see the two books in the middle, with the last one, the third one being the latest of our editions. And this includes what we've picked up, you know, new learnings, new things that come onto the market, and we consolidate that all the time, and we keep on improving our editions. We also have on your far right, that's the change management for agile projects. This is our new edition, our new baby, which we're very excited about. We realize that there is a need for a change management approach specific to the agile environment, for the agile projects. And we therefore, we spelled out what needs to happen with this agile iteration, you know, and the sort of things that we need to apply from a change management point of view. So that we're very excited about. And our knowledge base, you know, we have this on our website. If you'd like to download some of the editions, have a feel of some of the material that we present, please feel welcome to go to our website, and I'll be providing you with links as we proceed. So when we spoke about change management, these are some of the things that you know, people think of, you know, change management in its most operational dimension. We think about communication. Yes, communication is an important part of change management. Here we talk about, you know, what sort of key messages we need to bring in, what's the culture of delivering communication within an organization, what works. What can we innovate around that particular environment? What is allowed? How do we feedback? How do we feedback and ensure that we got loopholes of feeding back to the audience that we communicate to? How do we pick up more information? So that is still an important part of change management, but I think our basic understanding starts off right there with regards to communication. The other area, you know, that comes to the front when people think about change management is training. You know, so looking at leadership development, you know, how do we impact on some skills on a project as well? How do we coordinate that to make sure that we are actually impacting on the skills, and people are improving, they're changing their KPIs to align with whatever we are changing. So still, again, quite operational in terms of looking at change management, but it still is an important part. And then we've got organizational impact. So organizational impacts look at, you know, what sort of impact are you having when you introduce a project from the as is to the to be that you imagine the project to be like after you've implemented. And here we look at the degree of those changes, of those impacts. You know, what are the changes in terms of service level agreements? What are the changes in terms of processes? Is it high, medium, low? What are the changes in terms of job roles, KPIs, you know, work group reorganization? What are the changes in terms of maybe some organizational policies? Is an improvement that needs to be made from the current one when we roll out a project? What are the changes in terms of infrastructure, technology as well? And in some cases, what are the changes in terms of site? Do some activities now continue, or are they carried out in certain areas? Do you close new sites? Do you open up new sites? Are there green fields that need to actually kick in? So organizational impact is very important from a change management point of view. As much as we pick up holistic organizational impact, we will deal and we will highlight the human change impacts that projects would actually impact on, because that is what our mandate would be. And we will share the rest, obviously, with the relevant areas, you know, to make them aware of other impacts that we might not be in control of. And then what happens that strategic dimension of change management project in a project looks something like this, right? So it's going to have components, and it needs to have all these particular components. If there are additional ones you need to add on, please feel free to do that. But these are the key components that a change management strategic plan, we call it a CMSP. What it needs to have: sponsorship, right? Is there one sponsor who is going to be available, you know, who's going to have that commitment, has got a lot to gain from it, you know, and it's important to point out, and that's why we start off with a sponsor, because if we get this wrong, and maybe we have two sponsors that have different visions around the project, it's going to compromise the project. And if you have a sponsor who's just there to tick off, it's not available, you're going to have a misalignment of their priorities as well. So sponsorship is going to be very important, and this is one of the key areas that you know, we need to have. One of the key components that we need to have in terms of our CMSP, which I said is the change management strategic plan. The vision of the project, of the organization, what is the end goal of what you're trying to put in place right there. And the end goal helps to rally people around that particular project mandate. The purpose and objectives, we need clarity here so that right from the beginning, there's no misunderstanding. We have what we call a common point of departure for the project. Goals and matrix, very important. There's a saying that if whatever you're doing, you cannot measure it in 4 ways, through quantity, quality, timeliness, and cost, you shouldn't be doing it. Okay, or at most, it confuses people, and you get people having different interpretations of what the end goal would be if you don't have specific quantitative and qualitative matrix built into that. And also the good thing about having qualitative and quantitative matrix is that you can pace your quick wins based on that as well. So you need clarity around, you know, what it is that you're trying to achieve from a quantitative and qualitative aspect. Elements of the organizational culture, very important. What is the organization all about? You get a sense of this by walking the corridors, interacting with people, and as the more you do it, the more that becomes much clearer. You know, don't look at the values that are on the walls. You know, normally when I get into meetings and I ask people, what are some of your values? You find that they can probably name 3 of the 5 because they don't leave those values. So therefore, it's not their culture. The culture you pick up by observing, by talking, interacting, through maybe formal surveys too, but a combination of all that. Do not stick to the values that you find on the walls. Those are really, sometimes they do not really capture the essence of the organizational culture. And then we have project team assignments and the development plan. How are you going to pace up the development? You got a new product that you're rolling out, a new tool, a new system. How are you going to make sure that the team is able to deliver this? They might need some you know, development. You need to plan for that right from the beginning as well. Antagonism factors in the middle and engagement factors. What are the pull factors? What are the push factors within the organization? What is it that you need to fight against? What is it that, what sort of personalities are you going to clash with when it comes to that? Who do you need to manage, with regards to antagonism factors? And normally antagonism comes as a result of people. So you need to focus on how you manage that particular group of individuals. Engagement factors, what brings the team together? We need to encourage that and grow that right in the beginning as well, and make that part of our CMSP. The stakeholder plan, this by no magic is a surprise to all of us. I mean, even the PMI recognized this as an official, 10th, change management is an official 10th knowledge area because of the need to manage stakeholders. So very important, you do it right from the beginning, right up to the end. How do you manage people? How do you align people, motivate people, make them part and parcel of the journey? And how do you manage those that are against you within that stakeholder mapping as well? So it has certain strategies to manage different stakeholders, and it's therefore a very important part of your change management strategy plan. Ordinary communication plan, yeah. You start off with an ordinary communication plan, you have it in the beginning as part of your plan, but we know that also that you're going to have ad hoc communication requests. So build room for that as well. So do not stick to just your ordinary communication plan. You will have the requirement, because projects are agile, there will be a new requirement almost every week, and therefore a need to communicate specific messages at that particular time. So your ordinary communication plan is a guide, but by no means stick to that. Leave room for this ad hoc nature, the agile nature rather, of change management and projects as well. The project management structure, this is your governance, the roles, responsibility of various players on the project, who's who, what's the reporting like, how often what's our sponsoring committee made up of, if you have one, who's the sponsor as well. This is all part of and parcel of the project management structure. Kickoff plan, very important. This is an event that needs to be planned well in advance. And this could be a make or break situation for your project as well, because if your kickoff plan is mistimed, it doesn't have the right elements in it, it might compromise how you start the project. You might start on a back foot if you don't have a proper kickoff plan. Action plan, this is a plan of activities, tasks, plan for the whole team, including change management as well. Quick wins, like I said to you, what you need to build impetus for the project. If you wait until you achieve the long-term wins, the cadence of your project is compromised. But if you have these quick wins, you build better cadence, and you will find that as you celebrate the small victories in the beginning, you can actually target and get to the long-term wins much quicker. Budget. Change management needs a budget. We normally forget this. So we've got team building activities, kickoff plans, we've got skills development, we've got a lot of events planned around change management. It should be no surprise, and we start looking for budgets right in the middle. We know how impossible that is, dealing with the people holding the wallet. If you come on an ad hoc basis. So try to build as much as possible in the beginning in terms of your requirements, and the budget aligned to that as well. And then the map of the risk inherent in the human factor. So you've done your organizational impacts, you understand the human factor impacts. You also need to have a very good understanding of some of the risks that might come up with that. In some cases, if you're introducing something that's going to change people's jobs, a great deal, maybe some getting rid of some jobs, we need to flag that very carefully and see that as a potential risk, and obviously an area of resistance as well that needs to be managed. And then change sustaining strategy. So we start off project initiation, and some projects you find that they just go up to initiation, implementation, and closing, but a great deal of the changes happen after you've closed the project, all right? So we call that the production stage or the sustaining stage, and you need to have an aligned change strategy as well, to make sure that as after you close, there is the sustaining of the changes, because a lot of the changes happen after closing. So you need a sustaining plan for the production phase of your project. Change is not easy for anyone. Okay, so just a challenge to you out there. When you bought your new fancy phone, right? How many of you, resisted using it, even though you know that this was the best thing? You can make presentations on it. It's got new software, new technology. I bet that there are quite a number of you who kept on maybe holding on to your old phone, right? Or when there was an introduction of WhatsApp, others, it's cheaper, but others kept still sending messages. And even some others to this day still want to receive SMS text instead of WhatsApp, right? And also, if you look at the top 10 stress factors, the human life top 10 stress factors, you'll find that in there, they've got some true seemingly positive life changes, right? But because it's a change, it's going to be very difficult. And I'll point out those two. The first one being moving to a new house. We should be excited about it. We should be excited about finding a new place. We've probably been searching for this sort of house for a long time, but it's actually is one of the top 10 stress factors. The second example that I have is marriage. Okay, some of you might laugh and argue, but it should be a positive life experience. Okay, so you find that even with marriage as well, because it brings about so many changes. So even if a change is meant for the positive, because it's change is not going to be easy for anyone. There will be battles that take place, the requirement to move to the next step, even if you know this is good for me, you get anxious and you get internal battles, and we handle that very differently, but it is not easy for anyone. All right, and part of the reason why it makes change difficult is that this fear of change can make people very uncomfortable. The risk perception stimulates resistance within them, right? So there's anxiety, there's maybe lack of information too around that particular change. They've got some imagined scenarios that take place in the head, and some of them are quite disastrous. So you find when you interact with such people, your engagement is not going to be very positive. So we need to make note of that. And with that, I'm sure we can make a little bit more effort to try to change people. Okay, suffering is something that touches each person differently. All right, so we're going to have ego at play in some cases when there's a change. Maybe you're taking away a role that I was doing, physically, and maybe I have less people carrying out an activity because you've automated the system. And I had a team of about 10 people that reported to me. I'm not going to be happy because you're taking away my power, right? And my status as well, right? And power, okay. And then my personal agenda, maybe I have, a preference for another vendor and, selling, a software that does exactly the same thing. That I'm not going to be happy with the new vendor that comes on board that's been appointed if it's not up to, according to my liking, especially if I'm in a position of power. So you find that, those are the normal, sources of antagonism whenever you get into a project environment. And we're telling you this so that, you do not get surprised. And you can actually start pacing, how you do your change management. And you can only start working on change management after you understand where is this antagonism coming from. Then you can come up, with a more informed plan around it. Okay, so just to talking further about antagonism, a description for you of what to look out for, of what an antagonist is all about. It's a person who is suffering and needs help. All right, so just flip it around. Do not, when you roll out projects, you meet antagonism, actually be in a position to kind of be empathetic. It's quite a key skill that you need as a project leader, as a change leader. You need to understand that there is a bit of a disconnect, some help. Try to get to the source of it and understand where it's coming from as well. In some cases, you might find that maybe it's just additional information that is required, and education and understanding. All right, so just understand that, you know, it's someone who needs help, an antagonist. It's not someone you should avoid. It's someone that you should actually go to and try to help out and try to find out where the source of antagonism is coming from. Okay, strategy change management treats human beings as human. Okay, we spoke about empathy. The key thing that we're saying is that if you break it down to a human understanding, some of resistance coming in, you'll be able to deal with it from that point of view as well. Do not treat people or try to compartmentalize them in boxes, or maybe even avoid them. Understand that you know, they are just human beings, just like you have gone through some resistance in your space. Some resistance around the changes that have been made in your life. Understand that someone else has gone through and will go through the same, especially when you're introducing a change. So this is very key message to you. The human continually seeks psychological security. So the more security you give me, I'm anxious. The more information you give me, and don't give me once off, it's going to be a continuous process. I need continuous reassuring. We all seek this in relationships. You see the little baby hands right there. You just don't give that baby assurance once and psychological security once. It's something that happens by the hour, you know, every day. It needs to be part and parcel of the journey. This is like a recurring micro activity with regards to change management, and definitely on your projects that you deal with as well. I'm going to talk to you about something that is quite unique to the HCM book approach. All right, we did you know, studies with regards to Thanatology. We looked at Thanatos is the god of death. All right, so back, you know, during World War I, psychologists found that you know, before the soldiers go to war, they almost experience death before they die. You know, there's a depression that kicks in, and when they did further studies, they found that that anticipation led to a lot of depression, and it's almost like a death that happened within that. And when we take this to organizations, you know, obviously this study started off in hospital psychology, where they could actually have access to the soldiers and carry out you know, this sort of assessments. They found that, you know, with the imminence of death, then there's the death, and then there's grief. And there's a lot that happens in there that we can actually relate to your organizational setup whenever you introduce a change. Okay, I'll open this a little bit more. So in the organization environment, related to the imminence of death, people realize that there's a change that is about to occur. All right, so I almost grow hairs on my back if I know that something around me is about to change. You know, whether it's a daughter getting married, or you know, or a life change. I know, you know, you almost feel it, like, you know, there's anticipation, there's anxiety that almost kicks in. You know, and then also the imminence of that. Some people enter into a state of anticipatory grief. Right, so they're looking at it. If you look at the soldiers, they're anticipating this grief, this death that is going to happen. So they get into that state at these particular stages, and it's the same thing within organization as well. And then when the change is implemented, what you find is that some people go into what they call organizational death. So they might pick up one little sign of what they feared the worst, and they think, that's it, I'm gone, I'm dead, this is it. I'm gonna be let go. This is like what happened to my previous mates when they cut them out off. I'm dead. And you find that someone like that is not going to give you anything within the environment, you know, or within the project context, because they are, you know, they're like a shell in a way, and they're not willing to actually do anything that supports whatever it is that you're implementing. All right. And then you get into organizational grief. So this is after, you know, after the change has been implemented. The instinct now becomes survival mode. You know, what can I do? If it's a job security issue, how do I hold on to my job? How do I keep holding on to this? is there some sort of sabotage that I can think of? It is human nature, ladies and gentlemen, but people do get into that sort of mode. All right, so anticipatory grief, as it relates to organization, is very important. It's actually quite important to find out and have a sense of where people are with regards to this. Studies have been done, so it's a human factor that we need to look at, understand what's going on, because some changes would be bigger, but again, even if it's a small change, people's reaction to any change is going to be different. And you get someone for a small change going through anticipatory grief and those stages that we've spoken about. So if we learn this and understand this, I think we can apply our change management strategies a little bit better. Okay. So strategy change management treats human beings as human, and like what we said, think about yourself in similar situations. Project professionals will be required to ace far more than the triple constraint of scope, time management, and budget. All right. So as I said to you right there is a requirement now for the project manager to do stakeholder engagement, leadership alignment. So that is what this is referring to. Okay, so it's always important to look at some studies, to drive the point home. One of those studies was the PMI 2020 Pulse of the Profession report. This is fairly recent. You find that we found here that 91% of the US CEOs believe the skill of empathy is directly related to a company's financial performance. No. All right, let's just open that up a little bit and explain a little bit further. All right, and here we are obviously still driving the point home of treating human beings as human. Okay, what you are, changes that you've experienced before, think about that, what you've been through as well. And I think that actually makes it much easier when you consider someone as a human being, put yourself in their shoes. Empathy, it's an essential competency for change leaders. I said that previously, I hinted at that earlier on. So the ability to empathize, the ability to put yourself in people's shoes, in your colleagues' shoes that are going through a difficult task as a result of a change is going to be very important. And when you make that, when you are able to do that, people are going to trust you. And when you start giving information as well and you have empathy, people are going to react to it more positively than if you don't have empathy as part of your skill set. So very important, it builds trust, it builds that human interaction as well. I would want to talk to you and come through your door. And you find that people do open up a little bit more within a project context or in the organization if you do have empathy. So very important skill set. Ignore the previous finding that we're just taking you through. The portfolio of projects and programs can generate, discomfort. You making a change. In fact, I think discomfort is probably a guarantee when you are rolling out your programs or projects. So strategy change management in this case encourages what we call an adaptive culture. How do people adapt to that environment? How do you speed up organizational adaptation? And also this comes with some bit of organizational sensitivity as well when you do come up with your projects and programs, but you need to make sure that there is an encouragement of an adaptive culture right from the beginning. All right, so now I'm going to talk about some of the principles of strategic change management from the portfolio. The first important thing is to establish a clear vision of the organization's future. It will help us to understand a portfolio composition. If you do not have and you're shooting off in the right direction, believe me, your project becomes very difficult to defend. If there's no alignment to what the organization is all about, what they're trying to achieve in the future, what is the stated mission, vision. If there's no alignment, you find that such projects are good to have, and they get put somewhere in the back room and there's no adoption because it doesn't speak to what the organization is trying to achieve for the future. Okay, second principle, The purpose gives emotional meaning to the changes that will come with the portfolio. So giving purpose gives that sense of belonging as well. And it's quite important to rallying people around, to rallying the team and also your change subjects around what you're trying to do. So very important as well. You need to have purpose as part and parcel of the project setup. All right. Just carrying on with the principles of change management, communicate the strategy, a set of intentions, and the portfolio, and a set of actions. And you need to do this as quickly as possible, by the way. So as soon as you have an understanding at the early stages of the project, you need to communicate this, because this helps people, see the end, what it's all about, what are we trying to achieve. Is this something that I buy into? What sort of actions are going to be required of me? So it helps right at the beginning to communicate this as soon as possible, because this kind of opens up the road for you, and it clears the path for you as you roll out the project. Okay. The other principle is that transparency, since the strategic discussion increases organizational credibility as well. So be honest and truthful about the changes, whether it's going to have negative impacts, because this is the start of transparency, where it comes from. If you don't have transparency, and you will run the risk of losing credibility on that particular project or initiative that you plan to put into place. So transparency, let's be honest, there are some hard messages to communicate, some hard truths to give to a project, especially the bigger projects that have high organizational impact, but we need to stick to that truth. Okay, so and that gives you transparency. Okay, the other thing that's very important, sponsorship at all organizational levels. So you are rolling out a project, it's impacting different areas, and some areas not so much, but you will still need to get some sort of sponsorship. You need people who understand that can help you carry out this particular project, and you need to formalize the sponsorship as well. And also the role of the change manager in this particular case would be to educate people within the sponsorship roles in terms of their roles and responsibilities, and how often they carry out some sponsorship activities as well. It's going to be very important. For example, I find that for some different areas, so if you are impacting different departments, in a huge organization, you find that the leader of that particular unit or department needs to be, for example, communicating the messages. If you come in there without the sponsor or their blessing, you'll find that one, they don't really know you. Two, they don't care about your message. Even if it's very good message, they really will not capture it. So you would need, for example, that departmental head to help you with the sponsorship, to help you communicate, to open up the meeting for you, and to facilitate some questions because they have more trust in that particular head. So you need to make sure that when you do sponsorship, you've got all the different areas covered where you are making an impact. Okay, another important principle, co-creation, collective intelligence process. So, there's a saying that the whole is better than the sum of its parts. All right, so when you come up with co-creation as a team, you're going to find some amazing gems coming from different areas. And when you co-create, there's a sense of ownership that comes along with that. So people that have helped to build something are more able to support it and to open up doors for you as you carry out a project as well. So collective intelligence process, putting all the relevant brains, involving as many people as possible is going to be very important. So when you have a sense of co-creation, you have a sense of ownership. And I think it's the same thing with the next principle. Participatory process are inclusive and expand engagement. So, co-creativity, participation, encourage that participation to take place, have forums where you allow that participation. In your communication, seek feedback, find out what people, so what we do, for example, when we start off with, with communication aspects, for example, we ask the people, what sort of messages would you like to receive? You know, how do you think we need to communicate to you for you to understand what we're doing? So we're inviting that participation from the subjects that we are rolling out to. And we find that once you get them, you know, thinking like that, there's more engagement. And in some cases, what we also do as a trick is we give away an award to say, you know, we want to name the project, you know, give it some relevance to the organization. And you find we say that someone who comes up with the most creative name for the project, we give, you know, tickets for dinner or, you know, it's some comedy. And we find that it's not really the reward that people love, but it's actually the sense of being involved, you know, being invited to participate. That actually gives us mileage on projects. So very important to consider that. And that's why it is part and parcel of the principles of what we do. All right, so dissipating cloudiness reduces psychological insecurity for people, for the human being. So you're going to find when you start off something, you know, to show how it's going to pan out. And I say to you, for example, you're moving house. You don't know what neighbors you have, you know, you don't know what sort of area, shopping area, is it a high crime area? In South Africa, we do worry about that. You know, so you are a bit cloudy, you know, so when there's that change as well, it's the same thing on projects. People are a bit cloudy. And there's anxiety that builds up. These are the clouds. It's actually the clouds of anxiety that build up like this. So it's very important to start dissipating the cloudiness. So how you dissipate the cloudiness is by communicating as much as possible. It's not a once-off. Let people know your people that are impacted in an organization. Let them know that your communication is not once-off. And in a way, if you invite them to create some of the messages that go out, you actually help to dissipate that cloudiness. That is just one example that I have for you. But there are several ways that you can dissipate the cloudiness of anxiety and reduce psychological insecurity for the people that you are impacting. All right, and then engaging stakeholders in the portfolio is reflected in the, engaging stakeholders in the portfolio is reflected in the engagement in organizational changes, right? So stakeholder engagement, very important, right? You need to have an understanding, I think, initially of where you lie, your project lies with some key important stakeholders. And then you also need to know how to pace that in according to maybe the status and the resistance of those particular stakeholders. And it's also very important when you do stakeholder engagement that you ask, what do you need from the stakeholders? Be very specific. Is it communication? Is it buy-in? Is it their blessing to roll out in a particular area? So that is, I find it's much easier when you look at stakeholder engagement and try to get that understanding. And that will help pace, and that will help to strategize around stakeholder engagement as well. But once again, a very important principle, and this is the last of the principles I'm going to talk about with regards to strategic change management from the portfolio. All right, so in essence, strategic change management is essential to the ongoing process of organizational transformation. All right, just remember that as we do change management, we are impacting on how the organization develops. It's aligned to the organizational values, the statement, and is therefore an essential to organizational transformation, ongoing organizational transformation. All right. I think that's me for the day. Please feel free if you'd like to interact with me. I am on LinkedIn. You can go to my LinkedIn page. If you want to send private messages, maybe ask a little bit more, please do so as well. I would also like to invite you to go to our website, the new HUCMI website, just to get an understanding of some of the training and certification programs that we run. We do have some articles, some versions of the books, that you can download for free, so that you get a sense of what HCM is all about. Get a deeper understanding of anticipatory grief, which is only unique to HCM, by the way, and to the HUCMI, as a team.